for having me. My name is Hugo del Valle-Inclán from the University of Vigo in Spain, and in this video I'm going to talk about a LISS working paper I wrote about 1 year and a half ago. I will show you the code with which you can obtain some of the results I show in the paper. In this video, I will show you the code with which you can obtain some of the results that can be found in the paper. I do this hoping that it will be useful to you in some way in case you are starting out with LISSY or with coding itself. I will make this script available by giving it to LISS staff so they can hand it out to you in case you want to take a look at it. In addition, if you are also interested in the paper itself, I highly recommend you to check the most recent version of it, which can be found by following this link. I want to point out that this is Stata code, and it may not look like that just because I'm using a different text editor than what's the default with Stata. And also I'm only going to comment on the parts of the code that are specific to the use of LISSY and pretty much avoid commenting on what's the standard Stata code. So the way in which you work with LISSY is to first write and debug the script you want to use, and only then copy it and paste it in the LISSY interface in pretty much this fashion. Once you have pasted it, you would select the project, in this case is LISS, the package you are using, as I said, I'm using Stata, and also specifying the name you want to give to the job. Once that's done, you could click this button to submit the job for execution. I've done that beforehand, so I can show you the results right away, and this is what you would get. First, you have a window that shows you the script itself, what you sent to the server. It also gives you the output of the console, which in this case is this. And a novel functionality of the LISSY interface is that it allows you to check the graphs that were produced right away. And this is something that wasn't available when I first wrote this paper, and it really helps improving your workflow. So, returning to the code, I want to point out 4 things. The first one, and I can't stress this enough, is to read the documentation. The LISS documentation is very well written. You can find it at LIS WP, and by itself can solve basically all of the questions you might have. The second thing I want to point out is how you start, how you load the datasets you are going to use. The third thing is the use of the if statement, the conditional if, that comes in very handy when working with several datasets at once. And the last thing I want to comment on is the possibility of saving and storing your results in the personal folder each user got at the LISS server. So the first thing I do is to define the datasets I'm going to work with, which in this case refer to Germany and Italy. Right after that, I specify the variables I want to use. In LISS, you got personal and household files, and you will normally want to work with both at once. So you could merge them in a way I'm going to show you in a moment. To run the analysis I want in each one of the datasets, I use a loop that executes this chunk of code for each one of the datasets I specified. Everything that's within this bracket is going to be executed for each one of the datasets I've chosen. And the first thing this loop does is to load the personal variables and subsequently merge them with the variables in the household files. The way in which you refer to datasets in LISSY and Stata code is by writing this $sign before the name of each dataset, just how they program it. After that, I run some pretty standard Stata code until we get to this if statement. What this does is to execute the code that's inside these brackets and this other one only if the conditions you have stated at the beginning are matched, which in this case is that the name of the country is Italy. This is useful because not every variable is defined or coded in the same way across datasets. So by using this if statement, I can work with different datasets at once and specifying the way in which I want to work with each of the variables for each data set. If the condition is not matched, what the program is going to run is this other chunk of code that's within these other two brackets, which in this case is that if the country is not named Italy, it means it's named Germany. As I said, these particular variables are not defined in the same way, so I can work with both at once. This is very useful. Moving on, I only have some standard data code here I'm not going to comment on. This is how you estimate inequality of opportunity. And lastly, we get to the end of the first loop, in which I save different files for each one of the data sets once I have done some work on them. Right after that, I join them together by using the command append, which allows me to work with all of them at once. So in the new file I'm creating, I'm going to have all the years of the two countries that I selected at the beginning. The fourth thing I wanted to point out is that you can save files to the personal folder each user got at LISS servers. And you do that by specifying the path in this way. You first write this macro, and after it you would write your user ID, wherever that is, and finally you give the name you chose to that file, and this will store these results for later use at any time. This is very useful because you would normally pre-process the data in some ways, such as generating variables containing inequality of opportunity, and once you have that stored, you can work on the outcome you want to generate, such as graphs or tables, which is generally the only thing that's going to be in the paper. As generating tables and graphs requires a lot of trial and error, by saving the pre-processed data, you can save a lot of time. Admittedly, I didn't know this at the beginning when I started using LISSY, and I spent a lot of unuseful time just by waiting to the data to be pre-processed. I finally had this eureka moment in which I discovered this possibility of saving the datasets once I had them pre-processed, and that improved my workflow dramatically. I wish someone had told me about this when I started, so maybe this is the most important piece of advice I can give you at the moment. Once I have my processed data files, I can use them to obtain the output I'm interested in, which in here I reduced it to just one table and a few graphs. First of all, I create this table that I call comparison of moments that creates a text file that you kindly ask the LISS staff to send you by mail and later on add to your paper. Finally, the last thing this script does is to generate some graphs. Here I'm loading the data I created before and then generate these graphs I'm interested in using pretty standard data code, except for these last lines in each graph, which are specific to LISSY, and they generate and allow you to visualize in the LISSY interface the graphs you wanted to produce. These are graphs referred to Italy, and these other two refer to Germany. And that was it. I hope it will be somewhat useful to you and that the video wasn't very boring. Feel free to contact me if you think I can help you in some way or if you have some further doubts.